Welcome to the Online Strength Coach Podcast, episode 72, Peaking for a Meet. Hello and welcome to episode 72 of the Online Strength Coach Podcast. As usual, this is Mark. Today is Wednesday, the 10th of February, 2016. Today's question comes from episode 69 of the Online Strength Coach Podcast. It comes from Ian. And Ian writes, "Good stuff. How about a specific vid on peaking for lifters? For weightlifters, powerlifting, or just some form of test day?" I think we can start off with doing a bit of an interesting contrast between how a weightlifter might peak for a meet and how a powerlifter might peak for the meet. Now, I'm not actually going to go into like the specifics, the ins and outs, or the 12 or 10 week plan that's going to lead to the desired result in both sports. But you might think both sports are both barbell sports, follow pretty much the exact same rules, so you'd think the peaking would be similar. However, there's two different things that happen with these sports. So with weightlifting, the snatch and the clean and jerk are obviously a lot more difficult technically, and they're ballistic, there's room for error. It is very possible to be more than strong enough to be able to lift the weight and not be able to lift it, not even close to being able to lift it, just because your technical ability or skill ability is not quite on point. So for a lot of lifters, they can pretty much train heavy right up till meet day, and it's not really going to matter so much. What a weightlifter might do is they might just reduce the volume of assistance lifts, they might reduce the frequency of practice, and some will, some won't. They may limit the actual intensity that they practice too. I don't think they don't cycle. They won't follow like a powerlifting peak cycle where we're looking at the meet 12 weeks back, and we've got guidelines, or we've got landmarks to hit each week to make sure, or to help us know that we're on point, that we're ready for that load or our goal target, our target load. So how a weightlifter would peak for a meet is they will just train normally till maybe 2 weeks, maybe a week out. Certainly the week of the meet, what some weightlifters will do, pretty much most of them will remove squats from the program, or they'll reduce the volume of squats in the program. They'll remove pulls, or they will reduce the amount of pulls in the program. They'll concentrate on the lifts, and they'll probably reduce the volume of lifts they do. So if their training volume is 25 tons in a week, they might come down to about 5-10 tons in the week of the meet, just to make sure they're fresh and they're snappy for the meet itself. Some weightlifters might work on some power stuff. They might move the power snatch, power clean, to emphasize the snappiness, and probably more so to limit the amount of load they can put through their legs 2-3 days out from the meet. They'll probably do some kind of practice session with their openers. They'll probably take their opener for like 3 singles. At some stage, pretty close. That might be the workout they do directly before the meet. It really depends. There is no real hard and fast answer to how to peak for a weightlifting meet. Basically, you just reduce the tonnage of training leading into it, so make sure you're fresh, and then rely on your training on the day, and do what your coach says if you have one. Try not to bomb. So yeah, no doubt for a weightlifting coach who is like, that's their bread and butter. They work with weightlifters, the likes of the Russian national coach, or the likes of the GB national coach, or any weightlifter who they work with day in, day out on a 5-6 day weekly basis. They've been at it a long time. They'll probably have like a more meticulous plan. They'll know exactly what they want to do, why they want to do it. They'll have strategies in place. But I think that's a lot more individual in weightlifting and can vary quite a lot from coach to coach. Certainly from training around weightlifters. No, I'm not necessarily a weightlifter myself. I've only done one meet. Trained as a weightlifter, but for about 6 months, really didn't gel with my shoulders, so I kind of sack it. But from training around them, I've trained around them for a good few years. From what I see, they just kind of reduce total tonnage leading into the comp. There doesn't seem to be like a 5-6 week plan going into it. So that's how a weightlifter will peak. They just reduce total volume going in, and maybe reduce resistance lift and concentrate on competition lift. Some might switch it up to some powers a bit further out. A powerlifter, however, because our skill level, poor bastards, our dumb minds or our tiny little skill level can only handle the likes of squat, bench, and deadlift. We can actually predict much more closely how our performance is going to be on the day. So let's just go into me. Let's look at my competition. I just finished the competition. So I'll use a case study of my training leading into the competition. So I did the Scottish Districts. I had a loose idea that I wanted to do it probably in December time. I had one lifter who was definitely doing it, another lifter who was thinking about it, and I thought it was pretty good time. It was pretty good time for me to have a shot at a meet because training was going well, and I needed to get back on the platform at some stage. Obviously didn't do a meet last year, just for various reasons, work being the main reason. But yeah, I got on the platform on Sunday, so I knew going into the meet kind of what I wanted to hit. So I have various goals. I knew from the way squat was going that it was good to hit 280. I thought it was definitely good to hit 280, so I had that in the goal in mind. I've wanted to hit 200 kilos bench press in a meet for. It's been a realistic target probably for the last 3 years. 2013 British was the last time I tried it. That was a realistic target, so I want to put that bet to bed. But I did want to do a 5 kilo PB, or not 5 kilo PB because the 200 was a PB. 205 was my target, and then for deadlift, 292 was my target. But I would have been happy with any kind of PB at the end of a meet, like an actual PB, so that's 295 or 295 was actually probably more the targets. I pulled 293 in training, so I wanted to set like an actual PB in deadlift in a meet, which I've never done before. So I knew for definite I was doing the competition 6 weeks out. So I knew I was going to have to build up some kind of volume of work to put myself into a bit more of an overreached state from which to recover from. So I gave myself 4 weeks to achieve this. So the plan was I stuck to my normal volume, which is two sessions a week. I would perform like a higher volumes week 1 with lower loads. So I can't remember the exact percentages that I did, but what I will do is I'm going to pull up a program that I had one of my lifters do going into the meet, and let's just kind of give me a frame of reference to talk through what I was thinking for the competition and how I went about putting it into a build-up. So this build-up's a 4 week build-up. So for squat, we're starting off with 2 sets of 5, 70%, 2 sets of 4, 80%, and then a triple 90%. And we perform that session twice a week. Week 2, we're doing 2 sets of 4, 75%, 2 sets of 3 at 85%, and a double at 95%. And again, we do, as a 3 week build up, that's done twice, that's done once. Week 2, session 3, we're squatting, we're doing 5 sets of 5 at 75%, and then we do openers on week 3. So that's a very short build up. But basically, you want to start with like a high volume, still have a reasonably high intensity. So you want to start taking singles regularly in the 85 to 95% region. Start working on that kind of specific skill of lifting heavy loads, which you'll know from listening to this podcast, there's distinct skill discrepancies between the ability to lift like your 70 to 85% and your 85 to 100%. You need to set up differently, you need to be tighter, whatever. So during your meet prep, the closer you get to the meet, the more you need to practice that. So in my build-up, which was a 6-week build-up, I started off with 2 sessions a week, similar kind of idea to the program I just said. I was doing 4 sets in a workout. I was doing 3 volume sets and then a heavier set. So the first week, I think my squat workout was sets of 6 at 220, 3 sets of 6 at 220, and then I went up to a single with no belt at 250. Week 2, I think went to 5s at 230, 2 sets of 5 at 230, a set of 5 at 250 with a belt on. Then I hit a double at 260. Week following on from that, I did 4s at 240, I think. And then with the belt, I worked up to 275. Then I found that that kind of 3-week block, and those were only single sessions. I was doing 2 squat sessions a week, so I was doing similar kind of workouts. For the deadlift, I was doing like heavy triples, and just worked up. So the triples were at I think started off 75% of targets, 75 at 280, and we got up to 85% of target. I found at the end of that, I was 3 weeks of the 6. I found at the end of that I'd accrued a fairly substantial amount of work and was pretty much crooked. So I took like an easy week after that. Easy week was just 70%, working through the movements, just trying to kind of loosen off a little bit. And then I had 2 weeks left, so basically what I did was I did volume at 75% on week 5. So the week before the meet was doing volume at 75%. And I took my openers twice in that week, so I worked up to like a 260 squat to commands after doing my volume work. I worked up to my bench press opener to commands after some volume work, and deadlift the exact same thing. After some light volume work, I worked up to my openers. The week prior to the meet, I pretty much jacked the deadlift. For squat, I was again working with fairly light loads, reduced the intensity a fair bit. I worked up to, I think the heaviest I worked up to in that week was, I think it was about 240 in the squat. I'm talking shit. On the first workout of that week, so on week 5, the first workout, I worked up to an opener again, which was 260. Much lesser volume in that week. On bench press, similar sort of vibe, and on deadlift it was gone. So I did 2 workouts that week of squat and deadlift. On the week of the comp, my plan was to perform two workouts at around 70%, 3 sets of 3 on squat and bench press. On the first workout, for some reason, more stupidity, I decided to do some tempo work because I thought it was too light. On the squat, during that tempo work, I tweaked my left knee. So I wasn't wearing knee sleeves, I wasn't wearing the same shoes I've been squatting in. I basically just been a fucking idiot and tweaked my left knee. And on bench press, I like to do some over pause work, so that was actually not as stupid, where I did 3-second hold at the top, 3-second hold on the chest, and then a 3-second hold at the top after you press it for the rack command. And everything's done to commands probably for the last 3 weeks. Certainly I will do at least 1 set to commands for squat, bench press and deadlift. So there's an example of like a 3-week peaking cycle, as it were, for one of the lifters that I coach. And the first instance. Second instance is my less well-planned peaking cycle for the last meet. Basically, what you want to do is you want to create a period of work, and I don't really like creating periods of work anymore that are much more than 4 weeks, because I find you start dragging out your programs, it becomes a lot more difficult to get like a nice short punctuated cycle of good work in. So like a 3-week gives you a nice time frame to work with, where you can set together like a good volume week, a nice transition week, and then a good kind of mini peak week with a deload, or just run back into the volume week again. So I like working on those kind of 3 to 4 week cycles, because I think it gives you a much better flow to your program. You can put things together a lot easier, that runs together, there's sense to it, and you can then look at your programs or your blocks as a whole. So you can say, here's a volume block, here's an intensity block, here's an intensity block, and then here's a peaking block. So that's how you I would put together like a longer cycle period, a longer period of training. If I know that a lifter is not gonna meet for 6 months, then I'll probably just like go volume block, intensity block, volume block, intensity block, volume block, intensity block. So doing like 6-week cycles, work it up to probably within about 85%, 90%. Not actually going past 90% in their training. They will eventually, after a few cycles, go past 90% because they'll get stronger, but it won't be 90% anymore for them. And they'll just kind of cyclically do that for about 6 weeks. And then that kind of having the smaller 3-week blocks, if things happen, which they invariably do. Someone picks up a back spasm, someone's knee gets sore, someone's got to go on holiday or whatever. It just gives you flexibility to kind of move with the program more fluidly and kind of adapt to situations rather than having like a 12-week meet prep, which is right, fuck, I need to do this. So other ways of doing meet prep, which I've done in the past, which do work quite well, is that more targeted, right, in the meet I want to hit 280. So for example, I might have went, right, for 12 weeks, I'm going to do 8s. So the first session at 8 would be 70% of the target. Week 2 would be 75% of the target for 8. Then we move to 6s. We go to maybe 78%, 80%, 85%. We basically, you just have like a very staggered kind of landmarking program. Like a landmarked program would be something that like Bill Kazmaier would talk about or Ed Cohen would talk about, where they knew they have a target waiting to meet, so they know within a 12-week time frame. Previously, they've used this kind of landmarking system where they went, right, on week 1, these are the reps, these are the sets, and this is the load I would need to hit for that weight, and they'll just kind of work back from there. So I need to be doing doubles kind of a week out this way, doubles 2 weeks out, triples 3 weeks out, and they'll know the loads that they'll need to be hitting to come out in the meet to hit what they want to hit. So that's like a very structured kind of landmarked way of doing a peak-in cycle. It does work very well. It's probably what the majority of lifters do. However, it depends. I like how you train, what you do. So I would definitely push more training the competition lifts for the vast majority of the year and trying to kind of tweak technique and try to get better at them. So I would always be working with the same exercises, and I would, as much as possible, I want to know what the person's calendar is. So if you can give me your year calendar, then we'll know. I'll sit down and do a loose plan, and it probably takes me about 20 minutes, probably not even that, to go, all right, here's our most important meet. So here are our training cycles back from there. And then that's kind of like our red zone for the year. So that's when things need to be kind of tight, and we know, okay, the loads within those programs might change depending on how training's going. If training's going really well, then the loads might go up. If training's not going so well, loads might go down. But I'll know when I get into that red zone. And the red zone for me are the kind of important training periods, probably about 8 weeks to 10 weeks before your most important meet of the year. That's kind of your red zone of training. So you'll have scenarios with lifters where they'll be like, oh, I've got an invite to this championship, or I like to do this competition, and I say no. Sometimes lifters want to do it, but my take's, this is your comp. You can't have anything. You can't compromise your preparation for this competition, because this is what we're working for right now. So that's kind of like a red zone, or like a peak and red zone for me is when you're coming into the meet that you're working for. So nothing else is a priority in your life, really, within reason, obviously. But like, if you play 5-a-side football, or you want to cut weight, or you want to do this, or you want to do that in that period, you get told to fuck off, because we are building towards this meet. This is what we're doing. So like that kind of, in that 10-week time frame, there will be like a 9-week block that will run, where you'll have a volume block, you'll have an intensification block, and then you'll have a peak-in block. And the peak-in block will be very similar to what you've heard me kind of lay out within my 6-week one and the 3-week one, where we'll work quite hard for a period. So within that peak-in block, the 3-week one, you're working really hard week 1. Week 2 is a bit of a lessening in the intensity, and then week 3 you do like 1 session to commands, and that's it. So you get a right drop off in volume. I try to like have a drop of about 80% in volume in that sort of period, and that's kind of how we work the peaking cycle. So best peaking cycles I think are about 3 to 4 weeks. But you'll know it's not just that's not the peaking cycle, because you perform the volume of work like 9 to 10 weeks out. So you have a 3 to 4 week block, 2 months out from the meet, where you'll have done the volume load prior to going into the intensification, where it becomes much more about the skill of lifting. It's probably not like a nice, neat answer. Not that you should expect that if you listen to this podcast. But that's kind of like the nuts and bolts of putting it together for lifters. So 5 minutes on weightlifting, and then 16 minutes on powerlifting. I should probably understand it. Strongman's going to have different nuances as well, but I don't work with any strongmen. I've worked with a few strongmen in the gym, but as regards to their actual strongman training and how to peak for strongman, I have next to no experience with that, other than I've done a couple of strongman comps, but I've trained like a dick for them, so it's not really something I can speak with any authority on. Okay, hope you've enjoyed that episode. I hopefully will have the podcast all uploaded on the onlinestrengthcoach.com by the end of today, hopefully by midday. I've got about 13 episodes left to do, so should have that done. And once that's been completed, I'm going to put it on iTunes, and then when it's on iTunes, I'm going to be asking all of y'all for a 5-star review, and tell your mates all about it. Hopefully we get some people listening to this fucking thing. That'd be great. Okay, that concludes this episode. Any questions, comments on YouTube, please leave them below. If you have any questions, queries, please shoot them over to speedpowerperformance@gmail.com. Thank you very much for your question, Ian. I've got a couple backlogs, so I will be servicing them over this week. Next episode is probably going to be coming out Friday, I would imagine. And I will release that interview with Mr. Jones this week. So that's been episode 72. Thank you very much for listening. And I'll leave you some Tupac. Enjoy your day. When niggas shooting at you free. Mama, I'm still thugging the world is a war zone. My homies is inmates, and most of them dead wrong. Full grown, following your man. Singing on ways to put some green inside the palm to my empty hand. Just picture me rolling, crossing the beans on the range that isn't stolen. My dreams are sensing, my hopes are torn. I'm like a reed that finally sees all that dope is gone. My nerves is wet, heart beating in my hands is swollen. Thinking of the G's I be hoping. Picture me rolling. Move to the side a little bit so you can get a clear picture. Can't see it. Picture me rolling.